It's the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on Better Sports Network.
Welcome to week 4, and boy, do we have a lot to discuss going in to the 4th week of fantasy football this season. You are watching the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show live exclusively on the Better Sports Network. I am Eric Balkman from the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, and of course the Fantasy Football Players Championship. You can follow me on the X at Eric Balkman. Reminder to go to myffpc.com, myffpc.com, to play the FFPC Weekly Challenge. There's no draft. There's no salary cap. You just choose your 10 players or 12 players, depending upon if you want to play with kickers or defenses or not. By Sunday's kickoff, and you can watch them ride throughout the weekend's games. Remember, only one player per NFL team. It's just $35 or $200 to enter, and you can win up to $2,500. Shout out to our producer, the man behind the glass, keeping things on the tracks tonight. He is the incomparable Tyler Soto. And let me welcome in our guest co-host for this evening, the Pros versus Joes draft creator / godfather. He is the source, or at least his website, fantasymojo.com, is the #1 source of FFPC data. He's been on this program before. You follow him on the X at FantasyMojo. From fantasymojo.com, the pride of Pennsylvania, Darren Armani. Darren, welcome in.
Hey, thanks, Eric. Good to see you. You know, in Vegas, it's pretty clear you're the hardest working man in high stakes fantasy.
Oh,
I think you're cloning yourself, because I'll have a conversation with you, you know, in the draft room. Then I walk in the hallway and you're on live with Howard Bender. And then I go down the escalator and you're coming up the other way, you know, commissioning a draft so you're everywhere.
Yeah, I do feel like, I don't know, like it's weird. Like I thought last year was the busiest because we did like 11, 12, 13 hours of live coverage with the Better Sports Network out there last year. But then this year, I feel like I commissioned a lot more. I don't know. I don't complain. It's a lot of fun. It's my chance to see guys like you, people I only get to see once a year. So I'm glad we did have a couple of short conversations, or maybe just one. I can't remember. But I am repping the Pros versus Joes sweatshirt that you so graciously donated to the Balkman cause. I wanted to make sure I wore that tonight because it is one of my favorite sweatshirts. Fantastic stuff. And I'm already counting down the days to Pros versus Joes 2024. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to get you set for week 4. All the news that you need to know about as far as injuries, as far as inactives go on tonight's game. Actually, we're going to have the Bettercast popping off in about a little over an hour or so. So you should make sure that you download the Better Sports Network, the Bettercast app, on the App Store and Google Play. Darren and I are going to go through all the picks, the pregame picks for the Bettercast tonight to help you out with that and make sure you're joining so you can win any of the great prizes that we're giving away here at BSN on the Bettercast tonight. That will be coming up at the bottom of the hour. We're also going to get into where Darren stands on certain players right now, as far as cutting, as far as rostering, starting, sitting, and much more. And then the final segment, before we give way to the best of BSN, will be some lineup start-sit advice tonight, including but not limited to Brian Robinson, Gerald Everett, Najee Harris, Jake Ferguson, and much more. That's basically your show tonight. Now, let's kick things off with Austin Ekeler. The latest, so I know he was limited yesterday. I'm looking this up right now to find out, did he get a full practice? And then Darren, interrupt me if you know.
He was out there today. I don't think it was a full practice, though.
So another limited practice, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so another limited practice. He's trending in the right direction. If he is active, you're playing him. I think that goes without saying. What's interesting here is if he somehow, maybe he gets downgraded, maybe it's another limited practice, and the Chargers decide to hold him out for week 4, given that they have a week 5 bye next week, and maybe it just be make more sense for the Chargers to bring him back in week 6. If that's the case, what do you do with Joshua Kelly? I get why he would have disappointed us in week 2, right? Because you were going up against the tough Tennessee Titans defense. Nobody runs against them. But then in week 3, man, I mean, against that Vikings defense, and he couldn't get anything going, where Justin Herbert was just shredding them. And I know it's passing versus running, but at the same time, he's got to be better than he was. And now he goes into this game or this coming game, potentially as the starting running back. Again, we don't know for sure, but he gets the Raiders at home. I guess in most of my leagues, I don't have to make a decision on it yet because he's not playing tonight. But I don't really feel good about starting Joshua Kelly at all. Dare I say, is he a desperation play, even if he's the starting running back for the Chargers this week, Darren?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's he had a bad game. Of course, recency bias. People were actually saying to drop him. I heard drop him everywhere from one person.
Yeah,
I'm not dropping him, but
no,
he doesn't have much of a ceiling. And it's a 4:00 start. So I'm kind of with that week 5 bye. It'd be tough for me to say that they would run him out there, but be prepared for that. But if Kelly starts, he's like a flex guy. I mean, it depends how desperate you are, but I'm certainly not I'm not crossing him off my list by any means.
What does Adam Krautwurst always say? Like, never cut running backs. Just don't cut them because it'll come back to haunt you. And I've applied, like, honestly, the more I've applied that strategy to my own teams, the better off I've been. Yeah, Kelly has sucked. I get it. And A.J. Dillon's another perfect example. Should have been wheels up for him with Aaron Jones out, and he sucked, okay? But at the same time, you never know when you're going to need that guy that is going to get that volume, and maybe that 8, 9, 10, 12 points, whatever it is, maybe it helps you out. I cannot conceivably cut a player, even though he underperformed in an extremely small sample size, even though he underperformed, where he has demonstrated that he is the guy and the team believes he is the guy if Eckler goes down again. So I think that's the issue here. You're disappointed with the results. Still got to trust the process here.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Darren.
You just got to stash the running backs because you don't know what's going to happen from week to week. Like, people were chasing Craig Reynolds last week, right?
I was one of them.
Yeah, I mean that's how dire the situation is, and we haven't even hit the bye weeks. So now, especially heading into the bye week season, you just need options available. You don't know what you don't know. So just don't drop them. Keep them and be prepared for Armageddon. I always say build disaster recovery into your roster, because you don't know what's going to happen week to week.
That's the first time I've heard. I saw you tweeting about that disaster recovery plan. I love that phrase because it's so appropriate, right? And I think that's what we kind of do when we're building these teams to begin with. Like, we're getting our stud running backs, we're getting our starting running backs, we're building our receiver core, getting our tight ends, whatever. But then that back half of the draft, I mean, it is all about getting the non-perishables, right? You're getting that can of beans that you can stick on the shelf, in the shelter, in your basement, that if you need it, it will be there to consume. You're grabbing that fire extinguisher that you could put downstairs. So in case of an emergency, you break that glass, you put out that fire with whatever that running back is there. And I think that it's not sexy, it's not entertaining, dare I say, not even fun. But it will be fun when you do have somebody to plug in later in the season. And by the way, that's just the negatives of it. Like, the positives could be now you have an abundance of running backs too. That could happen too, where you have, I already got Josh Jacobs and I got Joe Mixon. They're both top 10 options this week. I guess I could flex out. Who's like Cam Akers or something like that if Madison goes down. And they, the Vikings have a plum matchup like that. This is why you do it. Like, you're preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. And fantasy football is somewhere in the middle, Darren.
And especially in this FFPC format, that the tendency of your competitors is to stash running backs. That's sort of the calling card. So if you're not in on that game, you're going to end up with 5 backs, and then, you could be toast. I in one of the main event leagues that I drafted out in Vegas, I drafted Chubb, and I committed the sin of drafting his backup of Jerome Ford. But thank God I did, because I say Ford is maybe like 70% production of Chubb. And if you don't have that, it's a short regular season. You're gonna be scrambling. There's nothing out on the waiver wire for running backs. It's all dirt. And you pick a guy up, and that was Craig Reynolds. People were paying, or Matt Breida. People were paying $300 for Matt Breida on Fab just for the hope or pray that he like falls into the end zone and gets you somewhere close to double-digit points.
And who are the backs this week that we keep hearing about? It was like Ronnie Rivers in Los Angeles. You had who's the cat in Indiana? Trey Sermon in Indianapolis. Jeff Wilson in Miami. Like, these are all the guys that, like, you're paying a super premium, or you're paying a super low rate this week. But what happens if something, God forbid, I got wood here. What happens if something happens to Zach Moss? What happens if something happens, to Raheem Mostert or Devon A-Chain or, Kyron Williams? Like, then you're prepared. But if you don't pick those guys up, again, it's just like you said, you're paying $300-$400 out of $1,000 bidding budget to try to get these guys the following week. It's just
to hope that they're even available.
Yes, exactly. Like, they may not even be available because you might have shrewd owners in your league that already picked them up. I'll give you a perfect example. This isn't running backs. This is wide receivers. I already had Joshua Palmer on a lot of my KFFSC rosters, which was good. But I was blown away by how many leagues he was still available in. Like, my God, Joshua Palmer's out there in a lot. And because I wasn't proactive the week before, and I get why, it's wide receiver, it's a little bit different. But because I wasn't proactive in picking them up and using those last few spots as roster churn, I ended up having to pay a lot for him. And quite frankly, I don't think I got him in any of my leagues because I wasn't willing to go that high, or somebody else went really crazy on Joshua Palmer. This is all because Mike Williams tore his ACL last week. Daniel Popper, who covers the Chargers for The Athletic, said that Quentin Johnston is going to be used more as a downfield pass catcher. He said the plan was for the Chargers was to bring Johnston along slowly. They can't do that anymore. They have to put him out there, and he's going to be used on those deep 50-50 balls. Now, Johnston has run a route through the first 3 weeks on fewer than 30% of the Chargers' dropbacks, and he's only got 5 catches for a measly 28 yards. He should be rostered everywhere. I pretty much realized he was rostered everywhere when I was looking to see if there's any leagues out there he was as a free agent, and none of my leagues was he available. Palmer was, and I think that's interesting, Darren, because I still view Palmer as the guy that you want as that number 2 pass catcher. Quentin Johnston might develop to be that guy by the middle of the season, by the end of the season, or maybe not at all. I saw a tweet from Dwayne McFarland today, and Dwayne McFarland said something to the effect of, like, why would you be interested in Palmer when he failed to break out last year when Williams and Allen were hurt? And okay, maybe he didn't have a season-long breakout, but I remember him having some pretty productive games while those guys were hurt. And now Williams is out for the year. I think Palmer is the guy that you want here, and maybe Johnston is down the road. I just don't know when that's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, certainly in the short term, it's going to be Palmer. And if I'm looking at the games that Mike Williams missed last year, so he was out weeks 9 and 10. Palmer scored 18 and then 7. And then Williams was out 12 and 13. I think he came back too soon in week 11. So he put up 10 and 13, or Palmer put up 10 and 13. So he doesn't have like this crazy high ceiling, and maybe that's why people aren't
that could be
enthusiastic. Like he's serviceable. He'll be a nice flex, but people, they get juiced up about the rookies, and they almost want to manifest like the Odell Beckham rookie season for all the rookie receivers. So it's at that place. So yeah, Quentin Johnston was rostered way more than Palmer was, and people probably be willing to pay more for Johnston because maybe they're thinking like later season breakout for the sprint, right? When you get into the tourney, that's the guy you want. You should be going for either one that you can get your hands on. But I'd have to look at the ADP to see which one. I'm guessing that Quentin Johnston was probably drafted way ahead of Josh Palmer. Palmer had to be like an 18th rounder, right?
He was super late. Yes. I'm looking it up on fantasymojo.com right now to find out where he was. But if I remember correctly, this is a player that is not pedigreed. Palmer is not pedigreed. He is not a guy that, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I ended up drafting him a lot in dynasty leagues a couple years ago because I knew Williams and Allen were coming up to the end of their contracts, and I thought, well, they're not going to keep both of them. Our narrator, they actually did end up keeping both of them, and it didn't work out for Palmer. But
Yeah, they've seen his act before, so they know like he's not going to blow it out. So Quentin Johnson was a 10th round pick in the main event that those last 2 days, and Palmer was the 18th rounder.
Yep.
So people were gambling on the upside, and that's probably what Dwayne is referring to. Because you know what you're going to get out of Palmer, which is it's nice, but it's not going to blow you out of the water.
Mm-hmm. I think that's important to remember too. Let's go to the Facebook chat right now. Our buddy Jim Parsons Jr., the notorious JPJ, wants to know: would you start Sam Laporta over Mark Andrews this week? Obviously, he's only got a spot for one of those tight ends. I am a weak man, Darren. You know this. I cannot conceivably sit Mark Andrews, even in a tough matchup on the road against Cleveland. Cannot sit him in favor of Sam Laporta tonight. I'm still rolling with Andrews.
Yeah, you don't want to outsmart yourself. Like you're not going to bench Mark Andrews. I mean, you want to try to get Laporta in your lineup somewhere else. But if you're just playing the one tight end, you got to go Mark Andrews. And Laporta is just like he's a luxury for you at that point.
The Browns have allowed the fewest receiving yards, no touchdowns, and the fewest fantasy points per game to tight ends so far this season. Mark Andrews has had one red zone target this year, and he has the 17th lowest ADOT among tight ends. That said, it's 3 weeks in. I don't want to say I'm trusting my draft because that's not necessarily true, but I'm trusting my player evaluation, and I still think we're working with a small sample size. I think Laporta is a fine flex if you want to flex him out in an FFPC league, but I can't. I would not. I'm not strong enough to start him over Andrews, despite everything I just said about the matchup.
Laporta is hot, but I think in one league I'm starting Laporta over Josh Palmer. Because of the tight end premium,
yes, absolutely, you are.
But you don't bench your studs. It's just it'll bite you as soon as you start playing that game. That's when they kind of come out of hibernation, and you remember why you paid up that draft capital for those guys.
And again, I feel like it's way too early to get cute like that.
Yeah, he's not hurt. There's nothing questionable about him. It's just he hasn't hit yet, and he's going to hit.
Right, he's going to have those big games, no question. Let's move on and talk about a young man named Alvin Kamara, who is no longer suspended. He's going to be back this week for the New Orleans Saints, which is good news for that rushing attack because it's left a little bit to be desired so far. Now, the Saints this week are going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a somewhat formidable defense. That game is in New Orleans. Total on that is below 40. It's at 39.5. Saints are 3.5-point favorites. Kendra Miller has not impressed. Jamal Williams has not impressed, and he's on IR. And then you have Tony Jones, who outside of those 2 touchdowns has not wowed us at all. If you have Kamara on your team, Darren, is he a guy that you'd be comfortable with flexing out his first week back here against Tampa?
Oh, sure. He's rested if nothing else, right? And you got Derek Carr looking iffy, so maybe they, take advantage of the fact that Kamara's been chomping at the bit to get in there. So it's all systems go for him as far as I'm concerned.
I don't really. I think I have him on one dynasty league, and I'm sure I'll be starting him. I don't necessarily think he's a bad start. Like I don't. Again, to your point, this guy is rested. He's not beat up at all. He's not dealing with anything as far as injuries. So to me, he makes for a fine second running back start and a really good flex as well.
Right.
Over back to JPJ in the Facebook chat. He's got a quarterback question. Wow, does he have some good quarterbacks on his team? He's got Anthony Richardson, he's got Joe Burrow, and he's got Justin Fields. He can only play one of them this week. I'm checking the game times right now, and I believe Richardson plays at 1 p.m. on Sunday. To me, Darren, if he's healthy and he's active, I'm playing him, no question. If he's not, then it gets a little bit more dicey for me between Fields and Burrow. I would lean towards Burrow at Tennessee because you can throw on Tennessee. You can't really run on him, but you can throw on him. And Fields is probably last on that list, even though he is going up at home against the defense that allowed 70 points to their opposing team this past week. I think Richardson's the slam dunk, and I lean towards Fields if Richardson. I beg your pardon. I lean towards Burrow if Richardson is somehow inactive.
Yeah, I mean, I'd go with Richardson too. Burrow's not right, but he's still giving you probably low end QB numbers. Maybe he'll be like QB 12 on the week or something, but you're not getting what you paid for. you know, as long as they're going to like, remember what happened to Fields last year? It was kind of the same story. He got off to the slow start. People dropped him. And then they kind of let him do what he, can do later in the season. I don't think that they're there yet. So it's probably going to be another subpar game. Out of those three, certainly Richardson's the guy. But, so Denver's going to Chicago. Denver just gave up 70 points. But I don't think Chicago's got the bullets in the chamber like Miami does. So yeah, Richardson's probably your best bet.
They are more likely to have fewer than 70 yards total than 70 points this week. And I'm not trying to be a jerk to Bears fans. It's a rough situation. I always say this too. Like my high school football coach always said, you're never. No one is as bad as everybody says they are, and nobody is as good as everybody says they are. It's always somewhere in the middle, and I think that's true with the Bears right now as well. Let's go back to New Orleans for a second. Derek Carr was actually speaking with the media earlier this morning, and he said, quote, "I do anything and everything I can with my rehab, everything with the trainers. I'm going to do everything I can to be out there with my guys, and if I can play, I'll play." He was asked for a timetable when that could happen. He wouldn't give one, which is probably smart. Carr is, if he does miss this week, he is going to be relieved by Jameis Winston, who came in for him against Green Bay last week and looked, he didn't look terrible, didn't turn the ball over, but he definitely did not look all that great. My question is not about Winston, Darren. It's about guys like Michael Thomas. It's about guys like Juwan Johnson. You're still rolling out Olave, obviously. And I guess you could throw Rashid Shaheed into that as well. Does the downgrade to Winston say to you, like, okay, I probably can't trust Thomas, Johnson, Shaheed, any of these guys as flexes this week. I need to go elsewhere on my roster. Or do you think that the downgrade to Winston is not that big of a deal?
Yeah, I mean, Winston's a gunslinger, so he'll be throwing it. I wouldn't really, if you were starting those guys previously, I would still throw them out there. But the reality is, this is maybe more of a super flex question, because in 12-team leagues, I took a look. Only 4% of the teams last week in the 12-team leagues started Derek Carr anyway. So he's not really a starter to begin with. But a super flex question is maybe that's where you gotta. If you're in a position where you got to start Derek Carr, you're probably in big trouble to begin with, because there's better stuff out there that people are rolling with.
But as far as like, are you doing anything? I guess the question I should have asked is, are you doing anything different with Michael Thomas or Juwan Johnson based on the quarterback change?
I might be even,
more likely to start.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, the ball's going to be flying all over the place. Right, so, yeah. But Kamara's coming back, but I think it's going to be fine either way. So I don't know that that's much of a downgrade for those receivers.
Tyler Higbee. This is an interesting story here that I think we should bring up. So Monday night, he ends up with 5 catches for 71 yards. It was all 5 of his targets that he caught for 71 yards when the Rams lost to the Bengals. Now, he was estimated, because the Rams didn't have to give an official practice report yesterday, and I haven't seen the report today. He was estimated as a DNP. The Rams just held a walkthrough to start the week. This is an Achilles injury that the Rams listed him as having. Now, McVay said it was more soreness than anything else. If he gets a limited practice in at any point, whether it's Thursday or Friday, hopefully Friday, I think you can feel pretty good about getting him into your FFPC lineups. But is there any trepidation that you have knowing that this guy is dealing with soreness at a very sensitive portion of the body that could be re-injury or anything like that? You might end up with like a 1 or a 2 or a 0 if this guy gets hurt. Or am I looking too deep into this and you should just look at Higbee as a guy that you should be using as one of your double flexes in tight end premium format of the FFPC?
I don't know that I would throw him in there as a flex. He probably, if you drafted him, you're probably thinking about whether you need to start him or not. So right now in the season, he's tight end 9. They drafted him. He got drafted tight end 11 overall. So he got 14.5 points last week. If that's your tight end, I throw him in there. If he's your flex, maybe it's going to be a wait and see kind of thing. If he's really limited, but I mean, also if he's all systems go, I got no problem starting him.
Rams do play the 1:00 game on Sunday. Too,
Yeah, so you'll
know.
And just as a disclaimer, Tyler Higbee was my number one drafted tight end in during draft season. So I invested heavily in Higbee only because he was so cheap. And for best ball and whatnot, he's perfect for that. So, even with Kupp being injured, so he's still seeing the targets. But I don't have a problem with Higbee. So I would, if he's your guy, then I don't know that I'm hitting the waiver wire to like find a replacement for him.
No, I don't. Unless he's your only tight end, you just want to be covered for Sunday morning. Then yeah. But I don't. I mean,
we'll probably know.
We'll know exactly.
Yeah.
We will know. We'll know by Friday, like you said. Like if he's limited by Friday, I have no qualms about it. Let's go back to the YouTube chat. Broward Bravado, a longtime watcher, viewer of the show. He's got a running back situation here. He can start 3 of these guys: Derrick Henry, Devon Achane, Kyron Williams, James Conner, or David Montgomery. He can only start 3. Now, Uncle Andy chimed in. He thinks it should be Henry, Achane, and Montgomery. I would actually lean towards Henry, Kyron Williams, and then James Conner here. I don't trust Montgomery tonight. I know that he is healthy enough to play, but he is still sharing that backfield with Gibbs. They might choose to work him in a little bit slower, although Devondre Campbell is out tonight for Green Bay too, so that could pave the way for Montgomery. I just happen to like Conner, Williams, and Henry better. The upside is definitely there. Those are the 3 I like. Darren, who would you say?
Well, so who's Tennessee got this week?
Tennessee is at home against Cincinnati.
Yeah, that might not be a Henry game if you think about it. I don't know how to bench him.
Well,
so,
and by the way, let's bring this up. Have there been any Henry games yet this year? Because it seems like Tyjae Spears is out on the field more than Derrick Henry has been so far this season.
Yeah, no, he had a couple good games. So Henry had 14 points week 1. He had 19 points week 2. So he had that TD. So I think it's okay. So Montgomery's out. So who are we getting rid of out of those remaining?
Well, I mean, if you don't like Montgomery and if you don't think it's a Henry game, then for you it'd be Kyron Williams, James Conner, and Devon Achane. Achane, God, quarter in the jar.
Achane. He's getting fancy on us now that he had a notable game.
He's going to be starting some sort of running back conspiracy website called achan.com. And I think that's why he had to get the branding out there for it. I'm imagining. I'm just, throwing it out there. Yeah. So is that what you think? Achane Williams and then Conner and sitting Henry?
Connor.
Conner, we should share. He is at San Francisco. That is a tough matchup.
That's not. I'll probably stick it with Henry. Just Henry could, Henry's still Henry. Yeah, Conner at San Francisco. I'm a little concerned about that. Otherwise, I might have stuck with Conner. But let's go Henry, Achane, and Kyron Williams.
Yeah, I can get on board with that. I think the one thing we are saying is like probably stay away from Montgomery, which just means it's the kiss of death for my Green Bay Packers, as Montgomery will probably rush for 150 yards and 3 touchdowns tonight.
He'll probably have some big plays, but not put up huge numbers.
You never know. It's going to be an entertaining game tonight. By the way, we're going to preview that game coming up in about 4 minutes here. Before we get to it, Tutu Atwell, 4 of 9 targets for 50 yards and a touchdown. In the week 3 loss to the Bengals, he had a 22-yard carry in that game as well. We could get into the conversation of what happens to Tutu Atwell when Cooper Kupp comes back. I don't think we should have that conversation yet this week. That's more of a conversation for next week or whenever Kupp comes off IR. But he's at Indianapolis this coming week. I had no shame about starting Atwell in a couple of leagues this past week. Darren Carey at KFFSC, where you have to start 3 receivers, had some injury issues. I put him in there. I was pretty happy about it. And I heard Mike Shope and Adam Krautwurst talking about Tutu Atwell versus Garrett Wilson for week 3, and they didn't know which way to. And it turned out that you should have started Atwell over Garrett Wilson, which that's another conversation. But Atwell going forward here, when you look at him this week, I feel like just same way I'm looking at it as last week. Atwell at Indy, I could start him as a 3rd wide receiver and feel pretty good about it. As a flex, I'd feel all right about it.
Yeah, I mean, you got to keep riding it. I mean, I'm shocked at what he's doing.
I am too. I don't get it, but I'm loving watching it.
It seems more of a function of Van Jefferson's disappointing. And I think I'd have to go look. I recall like the first waiver wire after Cooper Kupp got hurt. Everybody went out and got Van Jefferson, while Puka and Tutu were like right under their noses. So you don't know what's going to happen. But the question with Tutu is like if Kupp comes back, because we still don't know what's going to happen there. What happens to him then? This week for sure, I'm starting him. I think he's probably a wide receiver. You know, he's definitely a flex if nothing else.
I think that there is a non-zero chance that the way the Rams have been playing and the way that McVay has been coaching them, there is a non-zero chance that Kupp can come back and maybe not be Offensive Player of the Year Kupp, but still be, a top 15 type receiver to maybe a top 10 receiver right away. And you can still make a case that Higbee and Nakua should not only be started, but maybe Atwell still being flexed out. I don't know. There's a non-zero chance of it, and maybe I'm being a little bit bullish on the Rams offense. But that
might be tough.
We'll figure that out when it comes to it, because
he'll still have big games.
Yes,
in best ball, he's still going to be huge for you.
And I think the other thing too is Nakua has become such a target hog, and the Rams have gone out of their way to say that once Kupp comes back, Nakua is still going to be heavily involved in the offense. And maybe you're right. Maybe it is one of those things where it's like I always bring up the Patriots offense from years ago when you had Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez, Brandon Lloyd, and Wes Welker all being drafted super early, and we knew that one of them was going to be a bust. We just didn't know which one. Well, it ended up being Lloyd. That could be the case too with the Rams. It's just. I know there's pundits out there that say there's no such thing as too many mouths to feed. I think there is in fantasy football.
Yeah, I mean, you only have so many targets that can go around,
right.
So somebody's going to be the odd man out. That's the question if he sees the level of activity that we expected him to see. So it's probably better news that Puka and Tutu maybe stay viable when Kupp comes back than maybe you see 80% of what he expected out of Kupp. We'll see. So we just got to get him back first because people invested first round picks on this guy, and it's painful. You got to weather the storm and hope he gets back all right.
Zach Charbonnet, a lot of people invested not only dynasty rookie picks into this guy, but also significant. I shouldn't say significant, but definitely a little bit higher than mid round or the middle of the year draft picks in Zach Charbonnet this year. For the first time, he saw 11 opportunities in the game that he played against the Carolina Panthers this past week. Seattle had 75 offensive snaps. Charbonnet was on the field for 32 of them. 45 yards on the 11 touches, but still behind Kenneth Walker. Now, he did run more routes than Kenneth Walker, 16-10, which I think, flashback to a month or so ago, nobody would be surprised at that. We always thought that Charbonnet was going to be the pass catcher of the two. But you look at the way he's trending, Darren, and I don't want to make it seem like, oh, well, we got to get Charbonnet out there this week for sure. I don't think you do. I think you can kind of take a wait and see approach. I don't know if I would be even starting him in a dual flex league like the FFPC, but this has the makings of, especially for Kenneth Walker owners out there, you kind of got to keep your eye on this, because if Charbonnet keeps amping up the way he has been, that might make Walker be a sit for you, depending upon what your roster looks like on certain weeks. I think this could be a big Kenneth Walker this week as they go to the Meadowlands to take on the Giants. But Charbonnet is still out there, and he's coming.
Yeah, so the usage is creeping up, but he hasn't broken 10 points yet, so the usage hasn't translated to points. Walker's getting all the touchdowns, and Walker's getting, that's the surprising thing is Walker's the one who's been more productive catching the ball as well.
Yeah.
So this is one of those situations where you just have to wait to see that he breaks through before you throw him in there. But bye weeks are coming up. Maybe you're in a jam. You got to put him in there and just hope for the best.
Watching the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. Give you a little bit of homework now as we take our first break. Download the BetterCast app in the App Store and Google Play right now. When we come back, Darren is going to help me make my decisions on which way I'm going to go with all of these pregame props that I will utilize to try to win some significant swag for Better Sports Network tonight Even if I do, I'll probably give it away to a viewer next week. More to that I haven't won yet, so it's not really something that you should be threatened by. But we'll go through it. We'll show you how to use it. That's coming up as we preview the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions from Lambeau Field. Game time slated for about 45 minutes or so from now, right around there. This is the Better Sports Network's high-stakes fantasy football show presented by the FFPC. Darren Armani from Fantasy Mojo, Eric Balkman from the FFPC. Don't go anywhere. We're better casting it up right after this.
The Bears have to be one of the most inept franchises of any sport I've ever seen in my entire life. And they share the city with the White Sox, who are also inept. Like, that is how bad the Bears are. I just don't understand how you can go your entire existence and the quarterback that wins you a Super Bowl is Jim McMahon. You couldn't find anybody else.
They don't have a good history with quarterbacks, and they let him be the quarterback for a long time, too.
Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes right there. Mm-hmm. And you drafted Mitch Trubisky. They were right there. I there's a lot of pain in being a Falcons fan. The Bears are one of the teams I could argue they might have it worse, and they have a Super Bowl. And when the best quarterback in the past 50 years is Jay Cutler, you have a problem.
That's so funny that you just said that. We were talking about Jay Cutler the other day, me and my friend, and I was like, yeah, he was on, because we were watching the Colorado Rockies game against the Giants, and it looked like he was behind the thing. I was, yeah, well, he played for Denver most of his career. We looked it up. Chicago let him be their starting quarterback way too long.
Here's the thing, too, is that Jay Cutler wasn't bad. Like, he was erratic. He wasn't terrible, though.
The poor man's Brett Favre.
I'm taking him over Justin Fields. I'm sorry.
I would.
But Jay Cutler led that team to an NFC title game.
Yeah.
That they lost to Green Bay. But he's gotten farther than anybody else. You want to know who the other starting quarterback was for the Bears in the other Super Bowl appearance they made? It was Rex Grossman. What are we doing out here? It was Rex Grossman, and Kyle Orton was the backup. How are you that bad? Bro, oh my God. Listen to the top 5. According to Football Reference, the top 5 greatest Bears quarterbacks of all time. Jay Cutler, number 1.
I can't believe it.
Sid Luckman, who last played in 1950, is number 2. Jim Harbaugh is number 3. Jim McMahon, the Super Bowl winner, is number 4, and he played there for 6 years. And Mitch Trubisky, is number 5 on the list as terms of passing yards go.
22 minutes until the top of the hour here on FFPC's High Stakes Fantasy Football Show, exclusively on the Better Sports Network. I am Eric Balkman from the FFPC, Darren Armani from Fantasy Mojo joining me as well. And I know a lot of people, Darren, fantasymojo.com, at Fantasy Mojo on the X. A lot of people think like, oh, it's so great with the ADP and the stack data or whatever. But the season doesn't stop for you. Like, you still have a ton of great in-season tools that you are utilizing for everybody, all your subscribers at Fantasy Mojo as well.
Yeah, so once we get past draft season, the things that people are coming to us for is waiver wire data. Like, we produce valuable summaries of what happened in a given waiver run. There's 2 waiver runs, so we put that out there. Percent ownership of players in the main event and Football Guys or Fantasy Pros tournaments is useful, just as a quick reference to gauge how the availability of players. And then the other thing that we have are so the best ball tournaments that FFPC runs, we have the leaderboards for those that we crank out like Tuesday AM, like right after the Monday night game is finished. And it's cool because you can look at the leaderboard and then you can click on a team and then see the draft board. So you can see how do these guys get to the position that they have. And it's really interesting. Like sometimes it's not at all what you would think. Like the Superflex leader was not a guy who went after quarterbacks early. So it's always interesting to see, like, so this week there's a lot of A-chain on the top teams though. It's a lot of trivia. Once we get to, so that's it's more like fun and games, right? Just it's information like that. Once we get to the sprint, the championship rounds or the main event and the Fantasy Pros tournament, it's really back to serious business because we'll have, we'll break out the teams that are in the sprint and we'll look at what players are owned across them. And if you've had any conversations with the main event winners the past 2 years, they've used that data to drive decisions that they've made in starting players, during weeks 15 to 17. So people can go back. Actually, if you go to our website and look at, there's like a testimonials page, some of those conversations are on there. It's like how they use that data in season to help them make decisions that took them to the title. Because it's not just your draft. It's your draft, and then it's how you attack waivers, and then it's lineup decisions, and then it's mixing a little bit of good luck, but it's all part of the puzzle to take down these tourneys.
We got a fan of yours, ML, right now in the YouTube chat. Darren, you rock, man, on your waiver winning bids. I greatly appreciate you use median as opposed to mean. So much more useful, smart dude. Well, that's why we have him on shows like this. We want him.
Full disclosure, somebody told us that we had the average, but then if you have like a couple $900 bids skewing the data, median's where you want to be. Where was that midpoint across the spectrum of bids? So yeah, that's definitely more useful.
I want to bring some usefulness to watch the game tonight. The Packers and Lions getting ready to kick off here shortly. We will have the BetterCast going here at the Better Sports Network. You can actually play BetterCast tonight during the Lions and Packers game. Kickoff slated for about 38 minutes from now. You can predict what's going to happen in the game. You can score points, win big prizes, chat with our community about all the big plays, the top performers and busts in real time. A lot of the people who are in the chat room for this show tonight will be in the BetterCast as well. You can watch Thursday Night Football, play the free contest. The more questions you answer, the more tickets you win. And you can redeem those tickets for authentic NFL signed gear, collectibles. You download the free BetterCast app in the Apple App Store and Google Play. You have to be 18 years or older. So for all the teenagers that are watching tonight, huge demographic for me for whatever reason. And I'm just kidding about that. You won't be eligible to play. However, we are eligible to play. I have my BetterCast up on my phone right here. Darren Armani and I are going to go through this, and we're going to answer the pregame questions. Now, these are just the pregame questions. There'll be questions that pop up throughout the BetterCast tonight when you're watching it during the game, and you can answer those questions for more points and more tickets. So we'll kick things off here. Jordan Love, quarterback for the Packers. Is he going to go more or less than 231.5 passing yards, Darren? How are we looking at this? I feel like his yardage the first 2 weeks was kind of down. This past week it was inflated, but so much of it came in the fourth quarter. I was not a believer in the Detroit defense, and now I kind of am. Brian Branch looks awesome. I am leaning towards the under on this one. What do you think?
Wow, I was thinking this is going to be with Christian Watson coming back.
Who we don't know. We'll get into this in a little bit, but the latest report, and I should look this up to have this report in front of me, but I did see from a reputable source today that they are going to monitor both him and Aaron Jones's, like how many snaps they're out there tonight. So I don't know he's 100%, but I don't know if he'll get his full workload.
Yeah, he probably won't get his full complement of snaps. But so he's 230. So Love's exceeded that twice, and I'm feeling like they're going to have to throw it with playing the Lions. Mm-hmm. They're going to try and slow the game down. I don't know that they're going to be able to do that with the Lions. So I think it feels like an over to me.
Okay, let's go over on Love. We'll do over. Okay, boom. So we're on to the next question. Jared Goff. over or under 253.5 passing yards. Things to consider. He will be going against a Packers defense without Devondre Campbell, who's been really good going sideline to sideline, covering tight ends and backs in coverage. And the Packers will be without Jair Alexander, which I don't know how much he was going to be on Amon-Ra St. Brown to begin with, since St. Brown does so much out of the slot. But 253.5, that seems like a doable number tonight for Goff, don't you think?
Yeah, I just feel like it's going to be a high scoring game. Like traditionally, the Thursday night games have been duds, but the NFL seemed to like get things in gear and put some better games on Thursday nights. And so Goff's had 253, 323, and 243. So I mean that's kind of where he should be at, what they put there. So that's kind of like seems like
we should go over,
number, like you said. Yeah, going over.
All right, we'll go over on that one. Next up here is Sam Laporta. We kind of talked about him earlier in the show. More or less than 43.5 receiving yards. Now, he shattered that last week, but like one of those catches was like 40-something yard touchdown. I don't want to say in a busted coverage. It was just, to me, it was a really well-designed play, which I guess created the busted coverage. So I guess it was busted coverage. 43.5 receiving yards. I feel like the Packers have done okay against the tight end so far this season. Pitts and Jonnu Smith, they were all right for Atlanta, but I don't think any of them ran wild against the Packers. Obviously, you didn't see a big game from Juwan Johnson. Jimmy Graham did get the touchdown for New Orleans this past week. And then in game one against the Bears, Cole Kmet did all right, but a lot of that was garbage time towards the end. Where do you fall in on Laporta, more or less than 43.5 receiving yards?
Laporta's hot. I mean, I can't go under on him right now. So 43.5, I think he can do it. His over-under on catches is 4.5 catches. So I think I'm going to I think he beats that.
And if we think it's a high-scoring game, the other thing to keep in mind is Laporta is probably arguably the number 2 option, at worst number 3 option. But to me, it's been St. Brown and Laporta carrying that passing game. So yeah, 43.5 seems definitely doable for me. Brower Bravado also saying that he'd lean towards the over on that. Okay, let's go to the flip side. The other tight end across the field, Luke Musgrave. His same question, but his receiving yards, 38.5. Now, Musgrave was great last week. I've been a Musgrave guy, even throughout drafting season. I thought he was going to be a really good tight end. I don't know if I expected this much from him this soon. But you also have to keep in mind that some guy named Aiden Hutchinson is going to be out there tonight. Lions defense had 7 sacks in the previous week against Atlanta. And David Bakhtiari and Elton Jenkins, the all-pro left side of the Green Bay Packers line, will not be playing tonight. I would think that Musgrave would maybe be in the block a little bit more than he maybe traditionally has been so far this season. But 38.5 is not a high number, Darren.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go under on the Musgrave with Watson coming back. That probably eats into what he's been doing. I think.
Yeah,
so I'm going to go under.
Watson and Jones too. Yeah, that's the other thing. And Jones has been a force in the past.
Seriously, I mean, Jones is the guy. So maybe they've had to leverage Musgrave more than they wanted to early on. He comes back down to earth a little bit, I think.
Let's go on to Jahmyr Gibbs here. Rushing yards set at 57.5 on the BetterCast. Jahmyr Gibbs will now be sharing the backfield once again with David Montgomery, who is active for tonight's game. I think he was sort of miscast last week, doing a lot of the Montgomery work, and as a result, wasn't all that effective, wasn't all that efficient overall. I think that the ship gets kind of righted tonight. I already told you that Devondre Campbell's not playing for Green Bay, and he obviously was going to have part of his duties. We're going to be monitoring and covering Jahmyr Gibbs. A lot of that will fall on Quay Walker now. But you have Jahmyr Gibbs at 57.5. Does that strike you as too high? I think that's too high for just, again, this is not total yards. This is purely rushing yards, which doesn't strike me as Jahmyr Gibbs' forte, even though he is a running back.
Yeah. I think he's going to be under. We got Montgomery back, right? So
Yep.
I think that might be a little too optimistic. He'll probably do more damage catching the ball. It's disappointing too because man, Gibbs was the second, third round pick in draft season. Like people were all over him, and he just hasn't been that yet. And with Montgomery coming back, that kind of dampens the outlook a little bit. But yeah, so I'm going under on that one.
All right, let's get into Christian Watson here. More or less, 36.5 receiving yards. Doesn't take a whole lot for Watson. He is a big play guy. I think Broward Bravado pointing out all it takes is one catch here with Watson to go over 36.5 receiving yards. Green Bay's medical staff is extraordinarily cautious. Christian Watson needs all those soft tissue muscles for him to really be the best form of himself that he can be. I can't imagine Green Bay is going to put him out there and say, hey, we're not going to let you open it up all the way with your legs. I think they're going to let him open it up. I think he wants to open it up. The question is Love going to be able to have that chemistry with Watson right away where they are on the same page with the deep ball? We saw the Packers struggle with the deep ball in preseason, even in the early part of this season, and quite frankly, maybe a little bit last week. This is something that takes time to develop the chemistry, knowing where to put the ball, knowing where the receiver likes the ball. 36.5, I don't want to say it's a sucker's bet, but when you think about it, one catch could put it over, but will he get that one catch, Darren?
I think he does. And I think that line even went up today. I think it's at 38 now.
We're pounding the over then. We are pounding more than 30.
It will. So Broward Bravado, I think he's right. It's only going to take one play for him, even on a reduced snap count. Like he can do that easily. It's not going to shock me.
Let's stay. We'll get back to the Better Cast in a sec. I want to help out play good buddy Rich Bates hanging out in the chat. Another Eagles fan who is popping in tonight. Josh Kelly or Luke Musgrave. He's got to look for a flex in his FFPC team. Musgrave, I've been singing his praises. Kelly has not been great. It's tough for me to start a backup, who I think is going to be a backup running back, over a starting tight end. But Kelly's best game this season, Darren, was when he was a backup to Austin Eckler and had all those fantasy points, which got us so excited for him when Eckler was out. I'm going to play Musgrave here over Kelly.
Yeah, and if you got to make the call tonight, that's unfortunate because you don't know what's going to happen with Eckler. But I would go Musgrave and get off to a decent start, for the week instead of potentially getting to zero. If for some reason Eckler does end up going.
Or like a negative for Kelly. I could see
you get like maybe 5, 6. I mean, they say in these decisions, go for the upside. So who's going to have the upside in that scenario? It's going to be Musgrave. Whether we just said we think he's going to go under, but he does have that upside. Kelly doesn't really have the upside.
We are picking our more than or less than's here on the BetterCast app, here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. If you want to play along with us, the game will be starting soon. We're just making our pregame picks right now. Download for free in the App Store or Google Play and win a bunch of the authentic NFL signed gear and other collectibles we'll be giving away here. Moving on, number 7, I think we're on. Amon-Ra St. Brown. More or less than 71.5 receiving yards.
I'm going over. I mean, wow, this guy is unbelievable. So I wonder why the line is so low is what I'm wondering. But I'm going over. I'm not doubting Amon-Ra under any circumstance.
Yeah, I would think that Keyshawn Nixon would be covering him quite a bit tonight since St. Brown is out of the slot. Rasul Douglas is probably going to stay out on the outside. Just kind of wasted because, like, who's he covering out there? Khalif Raymond, Josh Reynolds, who didn't even have a target last week, I think. So, yeah, St. Brown could go wild tonight, 71.5. I'm with you. It seems low. Let's go over on that. Next one is the total points scored in the game. Are we going more or less than 45.5? Darren, I feel like I shouldn't even have to ask you. You're going to say the over.
Yeah, I'm going over.
Could be a shootout. Could be a fun game tonight.
Yeah.
And it should be a good game, at least. The next question, which team is going to win the game? I think I'm looking at it right now. Scores and Odds has it at Detroit 2.5-point favorites here. I feel like a young team like Green Bay, they can be a little bit not polarizing, is like inconsistent, right? They had the big game. Yeah, exactly. They had the big game last week, the big finish on a short week. Yeah, I know they're at home and the home team usually has the advantage on the short week, but I think I am going to lean towards Detroit to get the win tonight. I think that Green Bay has a lot of talent on the team, and I think Detroit does too. But I think Detroit's a little bit more polished at this point. I think it's Detroit that goes to 3-1, and the Lions get their 4th straight win over the Green Bay Packers. What say you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Lions too. Although I will say I'm surprised. Love's exceeded my expectations for what I thought he was going to do this year. So, but they're going to continue to grow, and I don't know if they make the playoffs, but it's got to be a relief to the Packers fans with Rodgers leaving. Like, they're not hosed at all. They've definitely got a bright future.
Yeah, and we've heard this from a lot of opposing players. I mean, Darius Slay said it last year when Jordan Love got into that Eagles game just very briefly and said, yeah, I mean, we were ready to go hog wild, pin our ears back and just rock this guy. And he ended up doing really well against us. We've heard from a lot of other players that have played against Jordan Love that Green Bay has a good quarterback. Still going to be growing pains. He's not going to be this good all season. In fact, it could be a down night for him. Tonight, he's done an excellent job taking care of the ball so far. I was cautiously optimistic that he'd be all right this season. I think he's been better than all right so far, with a lot of room to grow. We'll see what happens there. My wife is hanging out on Facebook right now. She says that my son wants me to come home right after the show so I can watch the game with him. Yes, tell him I will come home right after the show. I will watch the game with him tonight, so he can watch his beloved Packers with me and my beloved Packers too. I don't know why I said they're his, they're ours. Which team's going to score first? This is the last one on the Bettercast. Is it going to be the Packers? Is it going to be Detroit?
I think it'll be Detroit.
Detroit is. Now, we don't have to answer this for the Bettercast.
First.
I'm just curious. Do you think it's going to be a field goal or a touchdown?
I think it's going to be Montgomery.
Really?
Yeah. That's my gut feel.
Gut feel is David Montgomery getting the first score tonight. That's the Bettercast. So all of my picks are locked in here. You can hang out on the Bettercast all night tonight watching that Packers-Lions game. Once you answer the pregame questions, more questions will pop up during the game. Answer as many as you possibly can and get as many of those points that can go to tickets and win those collectibles. Again, the Bettercast app, free in the App Store and Google Play. Must be 18 years or older to participate. The last thing I want to bring up tonight, by the way, my wife thinks it's going to be Romeo Doubs scoring the first touchdown for the Packers. She must be hanging out with somebody. She has no idea who Romeo Doubs is.
She's had a few drinks already.
Yeah, she's watching the pregame. She's got the pregame on her TV, and she's got she's got the Better Sports Network going right now, and the Bettercast on her phone, no question. I have a interesting decision. I have to lock in about 20 minutes here, Darren. Would you play Christian Watson this week over Joshua Palmer? It's a flex question for one of my KFFSC. Again, full point PPR for that. Would you want to play Watson tonight or wait until Sunday afternoon to play Joshua Palmer at home against the Raiders?
I have that decision in the league, and I'm starting Palmer over.
They're going with Palmer.
Just for this week.
Right, yeah. Go ahead.
I think Palmer's going to do well on Sunday. They're going to go in opposite directions. Watson's going to ascend, and then
Palmer's
Watson
going to
start high and then start going down.
Watson could be more of like a steep ascension too, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like Palmer could be like more of like a steady, decline, whatever. Right. I'm screwing it up trying to do it on the camera, but yeah, I think okay. So I have Watson in there right now, but the other thing to keep in mind is I think I'm going to flip it to Palmer. We know he's playing 100% of his workload. There's no injury questions with him. He's already got 3 games under his belt. Watson does not. I think you're making a lot of good points here. We have many more good points to make on the show tonight. We're going to get into some where do you stand ons while we watch the game tonight. We're going to get into Zach Moss. We're going to get into Matt Breida. We're going to get into Kenneth Gainwell. That's a good one for you as well. Breece Hall and much more. Darren Armani from Fantasy Mojo at Fantasy Mojo on the X, fantasymojo.com. I'm Eric Balkman from the Hssf Hour and the FFPC RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. You can follow me on the X at Eric Balkman. Hour 1 in the books. Hour 2 coming up. It's the Hssf Show on the Better Sports Network.
Jake Ferguson, I think, is going to be one of the biggest frauds in fantasy, to be honest. I'm trading Jake Ferguson in Dynasty for anything right now. I'm trading him in redraft if somebody will take him. He scored the touchdown on a 1-yard play this week, but this guy, last week, he played 75% of the snaps, only ran 50% of the routes. This week, we were hoping that would change. He only ran 21 of 43. Not even half again. So we were hoping it would improve from 50, worse than 50. So Jake Ferguson, not the guy we want. And you saw it. I mean, if you watch the game, they weren't locked in on anybody. They had Hayden Hendershot out there, got a goal line carry. Luke Schoonmaker, the rookie, scored a touchdown. Like, they are not committed to just one tight end. And if you have CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup and Brandon Cooks and Tony Pollard, if the tight end isn't playing every single snap, then he's not relevant. I mean, even if the one guy was playing every snap, you're not going to get a Dalton Schultz because there was no Brandon Cooks last year, and Michael Gallup was coming off an ACL. So the conditions changed, and now this guy's playing a partial snap share. Sell Jake Ferguson now. And people tell me, oh, Dak Prescott loves throwing to the tight end. That's not even true. There was a guy on Reddit that just posted a study. His name is, like, I Call Cats or something like that. Great study, though, that showed that Dak Prescott doesn't target the tight end on an above average level. I mean, CeeDee Lamb got 156 targets last year. 156. And Michael Gallup and Noah Brown combined for 150. So, and the running backs combined for 85. So what is it? Does he love the tight end, but he also loves CeeDee Lamb, and he also loves the other wide receivers, and he also loves the running backs? Or just Kellen Moore just throw the ball a ton? That's what it was, right? So it's like this whole he loves the tight end situation, that's not even true. Right? Or he just loves everybody. Maybe he does love the tight end, but clearly he loves CeeDee Lamb. No? Like, clearly he loves the running backs. So just don't worry about it. Forget about it. Trade Jake Ferguson for whatever you can get right now.
The FFPC Weekly Challenge is here for week 4 in the NFL. There is no draft, no salary cap, no convoluted rules, just the same format as our ever popular FFPC world famous playoff challenge. 10-team, 30-team, 100-team contests are available for you. Just pick your players, let them ride for the rest for the week. Results are going to be determined by the total points accumulated by each individual lineup entry. There's classic and slim formats available, so you can play with kickers and defenses. You can play without kickers and defenses. $35 and $200 price points. There's a contest for any budget. New users will actually get $25 off their first FFPC entry of $35 or more. Just use promo code ALARM at myffpc.com. The promo code is ALARM at myffpc.com. Take advantage of the weekly challenge. We'll try to help you out with the weekly challenge as we kick off our number 2 High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. Eric Balkman, Darren Armani from fantasymojo.com. It is time to find out where you stand on certain players, certain backfields, certain wide receiver core, and certain units in the NFL, certain teams as well. I think the entire lineup I have tonight is just players. Treylon Burks is going to kick things off. Treylon Burks, 6 catches for 99 yards for the season. Caught 1 of 6 targets, including a really bad drop on Sunday, and also, by the way, hurt his knee. Limited in practice yesterday. He got a DNP today, which is unfortunate because Hopkins also got added to the injury report today, limited with an ankle issue. I think that when we look at this week, and we'll frame the question that way. When you look at the Titans situation this week, I mean, it's tough to make the decision to start Treylon Burks against Cincinnati, right? I mean, where do I stand on him? It's not good. I don't have him a lot of spots. What's going on with Treylon Burks in your mind, Darren?
Yeah, I mean, it was people were hot on him, and then as soon as they signed Hopkins, it's kind of been what we thought it was going to be, and Hopkins is going to be the focus. Man, it's tough to throw him into the lineup. I mean, whether or not Hopkins gets in full practices, he's out there. So it depends on your options. He might be like a secondary flex at best right now.
I think at best, and that's being generous. Like I don't know, maybe there's something going on. I mean, I don't know how you get 6 targets and you only catch one of them and you have a really bad drop. To me, that's like a focus thing. That's a mental preparation thing. If it's just one drop or whatever, that's fine. But to not catch 5 targets, and I didn't see the game, so maybe they weren't catchable. I don't know. But it's tough to be high on Treylon Burks right now. Rubio wants to know in the YouTube chat, why isn't Aaron Jones suited up? I can assure you that I've already seen him suited up on the field. He is suited up. Don't worry about it. If he's in your line, he's in my lineups, so don't worry about it. He's out there. He's suited up. He's all good to go. Where do you stand on this? Put this on the board. Where do you stand on Zach Moss? I can't believe we're asking this question. Week 4 of 2023, but he's been great, Darren. 30 carries for 122 yards against the Ravens last week. He also had 2 grabs for 23 yards and a touchdown. The Colts cut Deion Jackson last week, and Moss was basically the only guy in the backfield. Now, Sermon did get 5 carries against New Orleans, but Moss got 6 times that amount. Moss got his touchdown in the wheel route. Trey Sermon, we mentioned this in the first hour. Trey Sermon is a guy that I know some of the, what do you always hashtag it, the high stakes bros. They were on him and they were trying to get Trey Sermon in leagues this past week. But as far as Moss goes right now, man, he is locked and loaded as my starter, and I'm loving it right now because I don't really see an end in sight for this Jonathan Taylor thing.
Yeah, I mean, so once we get to week 5, I guess we'll have a little bit of clarity on what's going to happen, but it doesn't seem. I mean, if Jonathan Taylor was putting these numbers up, everybody would be like thrilled, right? So he's hit 20 points the last couple of weeks, so it doesn't seem like the need is there. The question is, does Zach Moss hold up, right? And historically, Indianapolis it's been sort of a recycle bin of running backs when Taylor hasn't been there. Like, get a guy to stick, but just ride him, until with the props on him. Look at Indianapolis if they even put the prop out there. Nah, I didn't see anything out there
for Moss.
Yeah, but no, you can't not start him. It's unbelievable because I wasn't on him, right? We had picked up some Deion Jackson initially, but based upon what he did last year, but they're going to keep feeding him the ball. The 30 carries last week. That's crazy.
All right. So Rubio is giving me a heart attack right now. So he said he just saw Jones coming out of the tunnel in sweats. Now, I already saw him in his full uniform tonight. I'm looking on the X right now.
You got to look on the Twitter machine.
I'm looking on the Twitter machine. I'm not seeing anything about Aaron Jones, like if he like tweaks something.
They're both officially active, it says.
Yeah, I don't. Again, unless something just developed or something, I'm not seeing it right now. But don't worry, I'll be watching like a hawk because I still got time to get him out of my lineups. But I'm not seeing anything on Twitter right now about him like, getting hurt in warmups or anything like that. So that's the best advice I can give you, Rubio. There he is. I'm looking at him right now. Wheezy's bringing him out of the tunnel, and Jones is in full gear. All right. And anytime Lil Wayne is bringing you out of the tunnel, it's going to be a good night.
Someone's trying to scare you, Balky.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe Rubio, I'm playing him in a league or something this week, and he wants me to bench. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. A guy I benched everywhere, and I don't feel bad about it, but man, I wish I had Devon Achane in my starting lineup last week. There's no way. I never considered it, so it's just one of those things that he goes off with 50 plus points. It stinks, but going
You're not alone.
forward,
Only 3% of the people that owned him started him in the main event in the Fantasy Pros tourney.
I know a guy who had to start him in Dynasty because Aaron Jones was like his last healthy running back and he couldn't play Jones. So he had to start Achane. And I think he had Mostert on that team too, now that I think about it, which is insane in some Dynasty league. Anyway, Devon Achane is on a team that just put up 70 points, 4 touchdowns last week. A lot of that came, I don't want to say in garbage time because pretty much that whole game was garbage, but Devon Achane going forward, to me, he's still kind of a tough start, right? Because Mostert's still the guy there. Mostert got a ton of touches. Mostert got 4 touchdowns last week, right? So Achane is like, I know we're excited to start him this week, but I don't know, man. I think you got to exercise a little bit of caution. Where do you stand on Devon Achane?
Achane. Throw him some respect. There's recency bias, and then like this is recency bias like times 10. He's got the talent, and he'll produce if he's got the ball. But you know what he reminds me of? He reminds me of like Tony Pollard, like 2 and 3 years ago, where he was like, if like he gets a ball, he's going to do something, but he's not going to be the featured guy. As long as somebody else is viable, it's going to be a committee. So he's maybe he's a flex. It depends on your options, but he's not going to do that again. That's probably going to be the best game of his career.
Yeah,
and we don't want to throw water on the rookie, people, because that's what they prophesized happened, right?
Yes.
But I don't think it's sustainable. So he's probably, he's probably other guys you can start over him. But we'll see. Maybe if you get 15 points out of him, like that's probably you're going to be super thrilled on a given week, and it's going to be hit or miss. Like Pollard was hit or miss when Zeke was running the show. If he gets into the game in the right situation, then he's going to deliver. He could get you 5 points too. So it's going to be tough.
And Dizzle is going to be super upset about
Javid Best. Is this Javid Best 2.0?
Exactly. I think about the similarities, right? Neither one was a first round pick, but I think they were like pedigree guys, like round 2, round 3, or whatever it was. Didn't start off the season as the guy, but all of a sudden came out of nowhere in like the second or third game and put up a 50. And then we all know the story of Javid Best. Concussions ended his career, or one significant concussion ended his career. God, I hope that doesn't happen to Achane. And not just because I have him in so many leagues, because he looks like a special talent, and it could be a lot of fun watching him. So
I would be thrilled to like have him on more teams, but it's going to be tough to like extract production that you need when you throw him into the lineups. It's going to be hit or miss.
Derrick Henry, we kind of talked about a little bit already. Did you have any other thoughts on where you stand on Derrick Henry? I feel like you kind of shared him, right?
Well, I think, people have been up and down, like, on him being dust, right? He's just like got so many miles on him, and it's probably finally, he's not, falling off a cliff like a quarterback does when it happens. But it's the usage and the productivity is probably not going to be there, especially as we move through the season as well. And the Titans, I mean, the game scripts are not going to be. They're not going to be leading by a lot of points, or he's going to be protecting a lead either. So it's disappointing, but it might be we're seeing the descent a little bit ahead, especially with Tajay. I mean, they want to give him opportunity too. He's the future. So,
all right, Darren, we got our another one. And I'll bring up the first question I answered without you, but in the Better Cast right now, we got the live question. How many points will be scored in the first quarter? Now, these are weighted differently. If we say 0 to 7, we get 12 points if we're right. If we say 8 to 14, we only get 10 points if we're right. If we say 15 or more, we get 30 points. Which one of those, which bucket are we picking? 0 to 7, 8 to 14, or 15 or more? This is points scored by both teams in the first quarter.
I'll go 8 to 14.
8 to 14, even because that's the lowest payout. We only get 10 points for that. If it's 15 or more, which is 3 scores, and I know that's a lot, we're getting 3 times the points for that. We're getting 3 to 1 odds.
I mean, you get nothing to lose and then go for the highest payout, but I don't know, like, what you're competing against.
Well, no, because I mean, obviously, if we take 15 or more to try to get the 30, then and we're wrong, then everybody else who chose 8 to 14 is going to get.
So you need 3 scores, huh? You need 2 touchdowns. And
you're the one who said it's going to be high scoring.
Not all in the first quarter. I mean,
all right, we're going to go.
We're going 8.
We're going 8 to 14. We're going 8 to 14. I also had one, and it's coming up with the kickoff. plus 40 points if the opening kickoff is returned, 10 if it's not. Not returned for a touchdown, just returned in general. I said yes, just because 40 versus 10.
You know your kicker better than me.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I feel like
does he get touchbacks, or what's the deal with
him?
him?
Well, no, he's got the leg too, but I saw a lot of like where he kicks it short of the goal line, that just to induce the return. And to me, like 4-1 on that, I would rather have that. So that's the way I went. I also is Anders Carlson kicking off right now, or is it Detroit? I don't even know who won.
I don't even know who won the coin flip.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm looking at it right now. It is the Packers kicking off here. Anders Carlson. He's got a touchback percentage of only 53%.
So quick, lock that in that they're going to return.
I locked it in. It's already locked in. We're good to go. Now we just got to hope that he kicks it short of the goal line and they don't fair catch it here. And the kick is going to be into back of the end zone. Okay, so we missed on that. All right, it is what it is. We got plenty. That's the great thing about the Bettercast, and download it free in the App Store and Google Play right now, so you can play along with.
It's like you're in the sports book. There's so much action. You can feel the energy.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. You can. It's palpable. What has not been palpable has been the Giants running back backup situation. Saquon Barkley was limited in practice. I don't know if he's going to go this week. Matt Breida, the touchdown saved him. Where do you stand on Matt Breida here going forward, Darren?
It's not a great situation for the Giants. Like I said earlier, you hope he falls into the end zone. Maybe gets you 8-9 points. I mean, it's not a dynamic situation for him. Giants have been kind of a mess. Although I do feel good about Danny Dimes this week. Monday night, I think he's running around. I think he's getting you because that guy, like, he was the reason why people won, tournaments last year. I mean, he went nuts that last week of the tournament. So he's got that high ceiling. But we're talking about Matt Breida, and he's not very exciting.
I said I was kind of down on Trevor Lawrence this week, and to one of my other shows, and I said I would play Daniel Jones over Trevor Lawrence this week, which I know is probably not a popular opinion, but I could totally see Jones having a big week this week for sure.
Well, they're playing in London too, and those games have been bad so many times, so that wouldn't shock me at all. I would probably, I would throw Danny Dimes to start.
I want to ask you here. We'll keep it on the Giants conversation. Darren Waller, I know you've been tweeting about this too, and a lot of people have been tweeting about how disappointed they are in regards to picking Darren Waller over TJ Hawkinson. There's a lot of regret there, and I do have plenty more Hawkinson than Waller, but I do have some Waller. I still remain bullish that he can turn it around. He can't be this bad all season, right?
Well, he hasn't really been bad. I mean, he got you 16 points week 2. He played the 49ers last week at San Francisco. I just don't think he returns the value on the draft capital. Like, he got steamed up so high purely on hype, in my opinion. But the bar is low for tight end. Like, he can still get inside the top 6. And they're home against the Seahawks. It's Monday night. This is probably a good week for Waller. And then they go at the Dolphins, so they'll be throwing more there too. So maybe the worst is behind him, but I still don't think he should have been drafted ahead of Hawkinson. I was drafting Hawkinson ahead of Mark Andrews very early on.
I saw you weren't alone. I mean, I actually brought that up like early in drafting season to a lot of the guests I had on. Is Hawkinson actually the number 2 tight end? You think about how he finished last year, right?
Yeah.
And you could make the case that the Vikings were going to have a major regression in the mean, which they're already showing, by the way, at 0-3. And I felt like this is the team you want to be investing in for fantasy. Right. Brian Flores is only one man. He can't go out there and make the tackles and everything himself. You have a lot of playmakers with Jefferson and Addison and Hawkinson, and Kirk Cousins has actually looked really good so far this season too. So I think, like, for me, I wanted to look at him continuing that dominance at the tight end position, and he has. Like, he's looked awesome so far. So I feel really good about him.
And one thing people don't consider when they're looking at what they're going to do in a given draft season, a lot of times they don't look at what the players did in the playoffs either. They look at regular season performances. And Hawkinson, like, man, he had big games in the playoffs too. So you can't overlook that stuff.
Let's go to Jerome Ford here. Where do you stand on Jerome Ford? A guy that, the Cleveland made the move to get Kareem Hunt in, obviously, and people are excited. I know some people were really excited, like, oh my goodness, I got to pick him up right away. I got a lot of people asking me all these Hunt questions, and I'm like, you understand that 32 teams have decided that they weren't going to sign him, like not only in the preseason, but through the first couple of weeks of the regular season. Cleveland brings him back. They went out of their way numerous times to talk up Jerome Ford. I was kind of like, Hunt's sort of just, he's a jag for me, just a guy, and I really like Ford. How do you feel about him?
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic. So he got 24 points week 2 at the Steelers. Mm-hmm. He kind of got away with something. Like last week, it was looking bad. He was 10 for 18 rushing. He got the touchdown, but he ended up with 19 points. Mm-hmm. And I think I mentioned this earlier. I think he's still like the production will still be 70% of Nick Chubb. So I'm very grateful that I drafted Jerome Ford where I did, because losing Chubb is a killer for teams. It is. So they say, don't draft backups. That's negative EV. Nah. I'm kind of glad that I did it. You can do both. You can grab other people's backups and grab your own.
Right. Like, it's one of those things too, because for years, that's what I always did. I always just grabbed my backups. And the majority, like I've said this before, the majority of the leagues I play in are with the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, KFFSC.com. And that is their main event is a national tournament. So it's not like, I'm playing against 11 teams. I'm playing against thousands in that. And for years, I played it like I was playing in a closed 12-team league. And I was, okay, all right, I drafted this running back here. This is where I should target his backup right here. And I was like locking up, like sometimes I'd lock up 3 backfields on one team. And then I'd wonder why, like, gee, I have these pretty good regular seasons, but I can't do anything when the big money weeks happen. And then, me being an idiot, I finally figured it out. So now I've gone to like where I'm not targeting other people's backups, but I'm going after players, backup running backs that are not my own, right? To expand that variance, which is what you're looking for. You have a situation where Chubb goes down, and I didn't happen to have it with Chubb. I had it with Austin Eckler and Joshua Kelly, which is kind of a pain now. But man, when I saw Eckler was not going to play week 2, boy, was I glad to see Joshua Kelly on that same roster. Not that I go after it, but if he represents the best selection for my team at that point, then yeah, I'm going to take him. Yeah. And I'm sure all those Chubb owners out there probably wish they would have drafted Jerome Ford too at that point. And he looks good. It stinks because I drafted him in a bunch of rookie leagues and I had to cut him because it didn't look like he had a path to success with not only Chubb there, but this was back when they had Hunt and Dearness Johnson, right? And so I got rid of him. But then I was looking in the offseason like, man, I could see a path for Jerome Ford having success this year. He's having success. He was presented with the opportunity, and he's looking really good doing it now, Darren.
Yeah, well, people thought they were going to have standalone value with Ford, and it didn't really happen the first week, right? Chubb just seemed like he's so indestructible. It's so shocking that he was the guy that went down, man. He was. I mean, if you put the top 5 running backs, like CMC is the guy you think is going to get knocked down, not Nick Chubb. Even Chubb had the injury in college, but the guy's a beast, and he just seems like you can't bring him down. But it happens.
So I just got on the Bettercast. Which non-quarterback will score the first touchdown for the Lions? I just locked in David Montgomery per your advice. We'll see what happens there. By the way, we're 3 minutes into the game. Jared Goff threw a pick on 3rd and long to Rudy Ford. He returned it into Lions territory. The Packers could not. I think there was one completion, and I missed who it was. It was maybe Musgrave or Reed or something. I didn't see who it was. I'll have to look that up. But they had to settle for an Anders Carlson field goal. 34-yard field goal. Packers up 3-0. The Lions have it once again 2nd and 8 in their own territory. And we'll give you the updates on that, as well as the updates on the Bettercast. Hopefully you're playing along. I'm in 2nd place right now, which is really cool. Never been that high before. Romeo Dobbs is the guy who caught the pass. I beg your pardon, on 3rd down. It's like 3rd and 19. Aiden Hutchinson got in for a sack, and then it was 3rd and 19, and Romeo Dobbs caught a pass for 9 yards. Moving on, where do you stand? This is right in your wheelhouse. Kenneth Gainwell. Now, I want you to take me through the process when you were drafting, teams during the summer. How are you handling Gainwell? There are a lot of reports from beat writers saying that he was going to be the guy, that he's the guy that you wanted to draft in your team, not Rashad Penny, not DeAndre Swift. I have a decent amount of Gainwell. He actually got a lot of touches last week, but I feel like a lot of them were after the game was decided. Where do you stand on Kenneth Gainwell going forward, Darren?
So I never really bought, Gainwell's the lead back, because that doesn't exist on the Eagles. They rotate backs. So, and what they did last week was they essentially rotated quarters. But Swift is going to do more with his touches than Gainwell's going to do with his. And that's what we end up seeing, and that's what the numbers sort of, showed out at the end of the day. The Swift is so dynamic, and assuming he can stay healthy, he's going to outproduce him. But they're going to get similar numbers of touches just because of the way they rotate. Boston Scott's going to score when they play against the Giants, of course, when that happens. But other than that, it should still just be Swift and Gainwell. But so Gainwell's he's like a bye week fill-in. Like I haven't started him yet on any team, but it's just he's going to be now. If Swift gets hurt, even if Swift gets hurt, it's still Gainwell is Gainwell, man. He's got a limited ceiling. I can't get too excited.
And I think that's the point, because you keep Gainwell around in case something happens to Swift, right? But now you're saying even if something does happen to Swift, Gainwell's probably a flex at best, in your opinion, right?
10, 12 points. I mean, but the bottom line for any of these guys is, and I said this even like in the summer, like the number one RB is kind of Jalen Hurts, because they cannot stop that rugby play where they just push guys in. They're going to do it over and over again because they can't. Like they kind of almost stopped at one play this past week, but I mean they're such monsters. Like you can't stop that. So all the rushing touchdowns when they're the goal line ones, they're going to go to Hurts. So you need Swift, who's just ripping off chunks of yardage, right? And Gainwell's not doing it.
Speaking of ripping off chunks of yardage, I think this is about I want to say a 35-yard plus pass play to Sam Laporta here after Rasul Douglas missed the tackle. Lions now have it inside the Green Bay Packers 25, still 3-0, 9 minutes to go.
Yeah, Laporta. He went over, right?
He went, yeah. Well, no, he didn't go over yet.
Well, we called it over.
We called the over, yeah, and it was 35 yards, so he's not going to need much more after that.
I watched that Thursday opening night game, and even though that the points weren't that big, I still drafted him like Friday in the main event because I he's like Hawkinson 2.0 seems like.
All right, we do have our first touchdown and our first Lambeau leap of the game, and it's of course Amon-Ra St. Brown jumping into the stands after he catches a touchdown from Jared Goff, a 25-yard touchdown. Lions now on top, 6-3, 24-yard touchdown, beg your pardon.
71-yard over-under. Give me a break. Come on.
It was a total bust. I mean, there is nobody within 10 yards of them. I don't know what happened on that play, but the Packers were not on the same page. Another question from the Bettercast. How many lead changes are there going to be in the game, Darren? 0, 1, 2, or well, we've already had 1. So are we going to go with 1, 2, 3, 4, or more lead changes?
Wow. I don't know.
And they're all roughly the same. We get 5 more points if we say 4 or more.
The Lions getting out to a lead, that's tough. Maybe 2, maybe 1 or 2. I don't know.
My instinct said 2 when I saw it right away. So let's roll with 2 as the Lions take a 7-3 lead here on the Green Bay Packers. Let's talk about Breece Hall. Where do you stand on him? This is a guy that could have gone 101 had he not torn his ACL last year, and a guy who looked great in week 1, and along with the rest of the Jets offense with Zach Wilson, has not looked very bueno since then. Where do you stand on Breece Hall? I got him going as a flex in one league. That's about the best possible compliment I can pay this guy right now.
Yeah, I got him in my 10-team home league, and I'm not even starting him there. It's I feel bad. It's such a bad situation for him.
Right.
0.9 points week 2 against the Cowboys, 3.7. And this week against the Chiefs, that's not a running script for the Jets. So it kind of sucks because I never really draft, like maybe one draft I took him. Just I never felt good about him in the second or third. Like the talent is there, but it's just, and it's really because Rodgers. Like it would be a much different situation if you had Rodgers playing.
Totally, yeah. The thing is, like Rodgers could have papered over the deficiencies they had on that offensive line. Zach Wilson cannot. Trevor Siemian cannot. I don't know if there's anybody who can at this point, and it could be a lost season for Breece Hall, which may not be the worst idea in the world. I mean, especially if the Jets stink, maybe they shut him down early. We all know that first year after an ACL tear is usually not the greatest for running backs anyway. So maybe next year will be the year of Breece Hall. Final guy I got to ask you about here. Where do you stand on Marvin Mims, a guy who had a big special teams touchdown this past week against the Miami Dolphins, a guy that was rocketing up draft boards the last 3 or 4 weeks of drafting season. But he's still behind Jerry Jeudy, still behind Cortland Sutton. Where do you stand on Marvin Mims right now, Darren? Your thoughts on him?
Well, it doesn't take much for him to score points. But unless there's an injury in front of him, he's probably not going to get as many snaps as you want him to. But, man, people love Marvin Mims. So I think he's a flex play. You know, I think more often than not, as a flex, he's going to pay off for you.
I think that, like, for me, like, I'm fine with flexing him out, but I want to kind of flex him out when I have issues with, like, bye weeks or injuries, right? I feel weird starting him in weeks where, like, my squad's at full health, right? I love the talent. Like, he will just need a small opportunity, and he should take advantage of it. But for me right now, I look at it from the standpoint of all the talent in the world is still going to hamstring his production when Sutton and Jeudy are still running ahead of him. Does that make sense?
He's still doing it with the limited snaps. It's crazy.
But that's the thing. Like, I know he can do it. He just needs the opportunity for more snaps. And then all of a sudden, you know, it's looking great. The problem is you got to get him out there. And I don't know if the Broncos are going to get him out there.
Would you start him or Josh Palmer?
Palmer, for sure, this week. Yeah. Okay, moving on. Let's here's what we'll do. We'll take a break. Packers are on offense. 8 minutes to go. 1st and 10 from their own 20-yard line. Darren Armani from Fantasy Mojo here joining me on Fantasy Football Night in America as we are taking in the Lions and the Packers on the Better Cast tonight. We're having a lot of fun doing that. Love goes down again for his second sack of the night. Ooh, could be a long night for Green Bay. We're going to give you some lineup advice coming up. Pacheco, Brian Robinson, Cole Kmet, Jahan Dotson. What are we doing with that guy? Hunter Henry, Rashawn Johnson, and much more. We're going to cover those topics. Plus, Darren's going to give his thoughts on those starts and sits. Darren Armani from Fantasy Mojo, Eric Balkman from the FFPC. This is the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show exclusively on the Better Sports Network. Don't go anywhere.
I like to eat my feelings. So when I'm like super sad, you know, single serving pint sizes of Ben and Jerry's, I just start shoveling that in, and it makes me feel bigger and better. But so let's eat our feelings here. What we're gonna do today is we're gonna talk football players, food. We're gonna pair them up. Who is represented by what food? All right, I want to just shout out Hal Alexander in there for CMC, Christian McCaffrey, is Rocky Road ice cream. A little bit of everything.
Yeah,
does
it? Good Hal.
I like it, man. You know it. I love me some Rocky Road ice cream. Bijan Robinson prime rib. You know what? Bijan Robinson prime rib with a baked potato and some cream spinach on the side. That's what I'm talking about. That is the King's dinner. And Bijan Robinson, I don't care if the dude from the Athletics says only 301, touches. You know what? In honor of Card Sharks, I'm going to say, guys, that I think that number is going to be a little bit higher there for Bijan Robinson. So get your knife, get your fork, you got your steak, you got your Bijan.
Yeah, that's what's up. You're on death row, and they say you get one last meal, and you just say Bijan Robinson.
Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, I'm totally down with that. Love it.
I got to jump in on one real quick because Mr. Scamper said Kareem Hunt is candy corn, and I actually had a player, Tyler Boyd, was going to be candy corn for me, and basically it's that nobody likes it, but it's always there. It's always there, and somebody always puts their hand in and grabs some and has some, and they're like, well, and afterwards they're like, why did I eat that? That's Tyler Boyd. He always gets drafted, and he's just kind of there, and nobody knows why. Nobody knows why they take him. Nobody knows where it comes from. Where does the candy corn even come from? Like, it's just there. It's just there.
CSN viewers, let me tell you about the Fantasy Alarm All-Pro subscription, something you want to make sure that you are taking advantage of ASAP, maybe even right now, taking a break from watching the game, well, maybe not watching this show, but start your free 7-day trial of Fantasy Alarm's All-Pro subscription today. Get DFS content, NFL picks, all for week 4 for free. Go to fantasyalarm.com/win. fantasyalarm.com/win. Tell you what other website you should be going to, fantasymojo.com. Darren Armani from Fantasy Mojo at Fantasy Mojo on X, joining me tonight on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show. I'm Eric Balkman. We're playing the Better Cast. I've slipped to 4th place, Darren. I've not been. It's been frustrating so far. No, now I'm in 5th. All right, I'm going to stop watching the leaderboard because every time I look at it, I drop down a spot. But it's a lot of fun. Make sure you're down. You can still play, by the way, in case you're late to the party. Go to the App Store or Google Play. Download the BetterCast app for free. Start answering some of these questions and winning prizes. Show off your fantasy football acumen. Let's get into some lineup advice here tonight. And these are all questions that I think I haven't gotten these personally from anybody, but I think that they are all decisions that people might have to make this week for week 4 in their lineups. We'll do our best to answer these questions, and hopefully it helps you out. Okay, the first one is going to be a running back question here. Isaiah Pacheco and the Kansas City Chiefs travel to the Jets at Jet Life Stadium, as Aaron Rodgers called it. Pacheco, would you rather start him this week, or would you rather go with a guy who's actually having a really good season so far in Brian Robinson, who is going to be playing against your Philadelphia Eagles, Darren?
Well, the Eagles have the #1 run defense, so that's not good for Brian Robinson.
And he's been catching passes too.
Yeah,
you know what?
that's pleasant surprise.
Right? Yeah, totally.
Pacheco's a Rutgers guy, so that's good for him. Playing the Jets, that's good for him, right? I mean, it could be a lot of garbage time. I mean, this probably seems like an easy Pacheco call to me. I love Brian Robinson; he's been great, but I don't think this is the Brian Robinson week, in my opinion.
It's Pacheco. I think the only thing that keeps Robinson involved is the fact that he's been getting these catches, which I didn't see coming, and he's looked pretty good too. Now, I don't know if this is going to sound silly, but I don't know what the recovery time is from bullet wounds or anything like that. Is it like an ACL where the first year after you get shot, you don't play, you don't get the full range of motion. It takes that full year after that. I don't know, but Robinson looks a lot better at this point this year than he did last year. That's the only thing that keeps this a question for me. I'm going to go with Pacheco. I think the game script should favor him as well. So that's where I'd roll with that. Wide receiver question, and this got a little bit more interesting today since DeAndre Hopkins got added to the injury report as getting in a limited session with an ankle injury. But DeAndre Hopkins is going to be at home against the Cincinnati Bengals this week. Marquise Brown is the other guy that we'll ask you about. He's at San Francisco. Tough matchup, but should be a positive game script, you would think, for Marquise Brown. And Josh Dobbs has actually looked pretty capable so far.
Yeah, he has. I still think I'm going Hopkins, and that might be against consensus. I think if I had the choice, I'm still probably throwing in Hopkins. It's the Tennessee. Who are they playing? They're playing. They're playing Cincinnati, so they're going to have to throw. Brown at the Niners. I think it's close. I just think Hopkins gets the edge a little bit.
It's tough for like it's all about the target hogs, right? Oh boy, who is that for the Packers that's getting his leg wrapped? It's one of their, I think it was one of their offensive linemen, and they've already given up 2 sacks tonight. That's not great. Unless you're the better boss who's hanging out in the better cast saying that he has the Detroit Lions defense going tonight. So congratulations to him if that's the case. 3rd and 3, the Lions have it from the Packers 47. We'll get to that in a second. Gerald Everett. Well, just to finish my thought on Hopkins. Anytime you have a target hog like that, I'm always going to lean that way. And I don't think Marquise Brown is the target hog that DeAndre Hopkins still is at this point of his career. Gerald Everett or Cole Kmet. Everett, I think, has been the victim of some Donald Parham madness at the goal line. Parham, 2 targets, 2 catches, 4 yards, 2 touchdowns this past week. Not sustainable. I still like Everett quite a bit, but Cole Kmet's been coming on too. I didn't look at what he did this past week for the Bears, but I know he's been getting targets. He's been kind of a bright spot there so far. Would you rather go with Everett without Mike Williams this week or Cole Kmet? And I'll tell you I should tell you who they're going against, obviously. The Chargers can be Raiders at home this week, and then the Bears are taking on the Broncos. That game is in Chicago.
Yeah. I can't do any Chicago players. They're a mess. Unless it's DJ Moore. It's just.
Even if it's DJ Moore. I'll be sitting him in a couple leagues.
DJ Moore.
Right.
I give him. He would be the only guy I would even consider.
But that's my point, Darren, because for me, even if it is DJ Moore, I don't know if I'm starting him. I think you can make a case to sit him depending upon what your team looks like.
He's always been sort of quarterback proof. The one way or the other, he gets it done.
Yeah.
But I'm not starting Cole Kmet, especially with Mike Williams out and Everett. And if Eckler sits out again too, that's a good situation for Everett to produce.
Yeah. Moving on. We kind of talked about this earlier. Daniel Jones this week, the quarterback, Danny Dimes, is taking on the Seattle Seahawks. That game is in the Meadowlands, Monday Night Football. By the way, I should ask you this. Where do you stand on 2 Monday night games?
I don't like it.
You don't?
What are you doing?
I liked it. Go ahead.
Monday night is that's the the marquee game of the week. And now it's 2. It's I remember they did that. They used to do it just the first week of the season. Mm-hmm. I don't like 2. That's just me. I'm traditional. I just want the 1 game. That's it. But I'm sure if you're a gambleaholic, you like it. So.
Right. So here's the thing. So to me, it's always the more football, the better. Right. And I know they're experimenting with they're trying to find the sweet spot to see where people are tuning into and what channel they should have the game on, where people are going, what time is good. Part of me wants to say God, they should do a double header, right? And kick one off at 7:00 and kick another one off at 10. I'd love it. Football all night on Monday night. But then the fantasy player in me is that could be a headache later on in the season when injuries become much more of a battle and you have to make guesses at 1 p.m. on Sunday rather than tough. So I don't know. It kind of goes both ways.
It's bad enough we got to do Sunday morning London games. You forget that's even happening. And then oh my God.
Which we should remind everybody, there is a London game this week, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, the Falcons and Jaguars kicking off from jolly old London town. Make sure you get your lineups in.
Wake up early.
Yeah, wake up early or do it before you go to bed on Saturday in case you are more of a night owl. As the Lions they've just gotten into the end zone again. David Montgomery, a short run, probably about, was that a 4-yard run? I want to say, 4-yard run for Montgomery.
That was close.
So you're very close. Lions taking a 13-3 lead on Green Bay right now. What was I going to say about
Gibbs bros they're punching the wall. Jahmyr Gibbs bros. They're
totally. He wasn't even in on that play too, which is unfortunate. The other thing I'll bring up is for all the FFPC players watching, you will not be able to pick up we don't run the waivers earlier on Sunday, so you won't be able to pick up any Falcons or Jaguars on that Sunday morning run and start them. So if you want them, you hopefully you already picked them up because they will not be eligible until next week. Daniel Jones, Seattle Seahawks, Monday Night Football. Geno Smith, New York Giants, Monday Night Football. Which quarterback would you rather play in that game?
Yeah, I think it's the Danny Dimes revival week, Monday night.
Over
in New
Geno.
York. Running around, going to run 70 yards and fall, right? That's what he does in the spotlight. So I think he's sort of underachieved, but I think it's going to happen for him this week.
I think you're right. I think it is Jones. I talked about him too. Like I'm a fan of him this week. I guess like the thing that you have to do is, and we'll find out more when the practice reports come out tomorrow. What do you do if Saquon Barkley is limited in practice again tomorrow? Would you roll the dice on him and hope he can come back, or are you looking elsewhere on Sunday?
I don't think he's coming back. I would be shocked if he plays. It's the Monday night game. That just really makes it worse for players too. Like they're going to wait and hope that he plays. That's really a lineup problem for people. Mm-hmm. But it's a high ankle sprain. I don't see him coming back this soon. I'm not sure when's their bye.
I was just about to look that up. There is, let's see here.
Your Giants.
There's 2 teams on bye this coming week. I know that.
And their bye's not till week 13. So.
Oh my God. Okay.
Then they got to play at the Dolphins. So, I mean, Saquon's a beast. Like if he can play, he'll be out there, right?
Yes.
But it doesn't seem like it's consistent with the high ankle sprain narrative.
I take that back. There's 4 teams on bye next week: Browns, Chargers, Seahawks, and Buccaneers. So I don't understand this. The Falcons and the Jaguars are both in London this week, and they're both playing this coming week too. That's wild. I didn't. That's what got the Packers in trouble last year, where they could have had the NFL schedule their bye when they came back from London. They chose to take it later on in the season, and they needed that bye right away. So we're both saying Jones on this one. Oh, this is a fascinating flex question. 2 guys that have burned people, high stakes players in the past. Najee Harris, would you start him over Cortland Sutton this week? Najee Harris going up against the Houston Texans on the road, but it is the Texans. And then you have Cortland Sutton in Chicago against the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, I think Sutton's got the higher ceiling. If you want to play for floor, you could go Najee, but Warren's eaten into his sort of production. As Sutton seems like Sutton was he even outproduced Judy last week. Denver's playing Chicago, so they should hopefully have a good performance.
I think there's been way too much people. There's way too much hate and way too many people talking down about Cortland Sutton this year. Like I feel like a few of the beat reporters from Denver were talking him up and telling us how good he looked, and yet Jerry Jeudy is drafted way ahead of Sutton. And we talked about Marvin Mims already. And Harris is a guy like one of my other shows. I had to name a bust of the year. Before the season started, it was a slam dunk for me. Najee Harris. I haven't been on Najee Harris since his rookie year. He's almost I call him a plotter, but I don't think he's big enough to be a plotter. He's a very unexciting running back that's very inefficient with the volume that he gets. And you can't just say it's Pittsburgh's offense or Pittsburgh's offensive line, because Warren looks a lot better when he gets in there. So I'm on board.
He's a compiler. I mean, his
total compiler.
His best score was 6.5. He did 5.3, 5.3, 6.5.
I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And for me, this is like a full PPR slam dunk Sutton over Najee Harris for sure.
Yeah.
Let's get into, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on Jahan Dotson and what's going on there. But you had him underperforming really the last couple of weeks. And then you had a guy who was really coming on who ended up underperforming last week, and that was Hunter Henry for New England. Now, Henry is in Dallas this coming week, and Curtis Samuel goes to Philadelphia to take on those Eagles. Not Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson goes to Freudian slip there. Maybe I like Samuel. Dotson goes to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles or Hunter Henry. Which one would you rather go with here?
I kind of like Dotson. Washington's going to have to throw the ball, assuming Howell can stay upright. And hey, Dotson's a Penn Stater.
Mm-hmm.
And Dotson put Sean Clifford on the map. I'm going to tell you, I know he's your backup quarterback, over in Green Bay, but he owes a lot of that to Jahan Dotson. And Dotson looked great too. I think they're going to have to throw, and Hunter Henry, what's he going to get you 10 points? So I think
unless he gets into the end zone, that'd be the only way he gets something more. Green Bay, another 3-and-out here. The Lions taking over with a minute 20 to go in the first quarter from their own 20-yard line. Lions 14, Packers 3 so far. Okay, so but like the thing is, what I don't understand with the Commanders, it doesn't seem like people are ripping on Howell in his performance so far this year, yet Dotson is just not getting it done. And we know the talent is there. He had a prolific college career, which you just alluded to. Sean Clifford. He made Sean Clifford look great. I guess, like, we're still saying you start Dotson over Henry, but man, there's some trepidation that goes with that right now, Darren.
Yeah, that's probably another against the grain call, but I think I just feel like it's Dotson. Hunter Henry is what did he do last week? I'm not even.
It wasn't good. I mean, it was like a couple of points. It wasn't
but
great.
He's been producing, but I think Washington's going to have to throw. They're not going to be able to run, and I'm going Dotson.
And that's fine. I guess the bigger question here is, like, I don't know. Based on what I've seen,
Henry
with
at the Cowboys.
What a catch that was by Josh Reynolds. Fantastic coverage by the Packers. I think that was Carrington Valentine, and Josh Reynolds made an insane over-the-shoulder one-handed catch. So they are in business once again. Let's put Dotson in a vacuum here and not put him against anyone. What do you think of Dotson this year? Think about how high he was going in FFPC drafts. You saw this, throughout the season. And he's really letting a lot of people down. And this is with McLaurin, who we haven't heard anything about his turf toe lately, right? And yet Dotson's not doing much. He's not pulling his weight.
It was that one preseason game where McLaurin got hurt, and then Dotson caught like 4 passes on the one drive. But that's what he can do. So the talent is there, but it just has to come together for them. Mm-hmm. I just think this could be the week for Dotson. He's not the 5-point a game player.
Right.
He's much better than that. And he was way better than that last year as well. So it's when does it happen for him? I think this is going to be the week.
The Lions just ran a reverse that got them about 40 yards. It was Khalif Raymond on the carry. The Lions are once again now at the end of the first quarter here, but the Lions will start the second quarter inside the Packers 10. Detroit 14, Green Bay 3. We're having some fun on the Bettercast too, so make sure you're downloading.
Where's Watson? Is he
well, they haven't had the ball. That's the thing. Like I mean, it's been 3-and-out so far. Let me bring up the box score here. No
targets.
He did miss. Yeah, Dobbs has 3 targets. He did miss Dobbs. Love did on a 3rd and long that he probably should have made. It just wasn't a good throw. And the Packers would at least have 1 first down. Aaron Jones, too, MIA so far, just 1 target for him. A.J. Dillon with the only Packers carries thus far. Last starter sit we'll get into here. This is an interesting one, FFPC one. Jake Ferguson for the Dallas Cowboys. Would you rather start him this week? The Cowboys are at home against the New England Patriots. Roshan Johnson also at home against the 70-burger Denver Broncos defense. Is the tight end premium enough for you to say, yeah, I want to play Ferguson over Roshan Johnson?
I mean, Ferguson's been doing it every week. And Roshan, every week he's getting a little more. And I think that's a guy that's going to be like a late season bloomer. But this week I'd probably still go Ferguson. And I saw it during the break, you had a promo. Andrew Cooper was like slamming Ferguson.
He was. Yes, he was.
I don't know what the stats might say, like Prescott doesn't favor the tight end, but man, that's not what I see when he plays. I mean, he's looking for his tight ends. So I'm going Ferguson.
It's weird because Ferguson has been doing it. Lamb has had a really good game already. Gallup actually had a pretty good game last week. The only guy that really hasn't had a breakout 2023 game in that passing game so far, at least among the major players, has been Brandon Cooks, which I know a lot of people are kind of down on him right now as well. Yeah. So, and Ferguson's a Badger, so obviously I'm gonna root on my Wisconsin guy. I'm gonna pick him there. However, I will say this: going forward, the first domino has fallen with the Chicago Bears in their ground game. It certainly seems that Johnson, and it's not a three-headed monster; it is a two-headed monster now, and it's Roschon Johnson and it's Khalil Herbert. And Johnson keeps, like, similar to Charbonnet. He's getting more snaps. He's getting more touches. I think eventually he's going to be the guy you want at the end of the season in Chicago. Now, that may not be worth a hill of beans, right? Because the Bears offense may just be a train wreck all season. But certainly if you have Johnson, this is good news for you as well. Darren, we only have a couple of minutes left. What's the best way to consume more Fantasy Mojo Darren Armani content? Simply getting a subscription to fantasymojo.com and exploring the site there?
I'll be honest with you, a subscription is best during draft season. Right now, just follow me on Twitter, and we got a lot of free content. That's, a lot of the stuff that we do in season is free, like the waiver wire. Like, just get familiar with the site, go check it out. Once drafts start in January, if you're playing FFPC and you don't have it, it's not my fault. We literally make millionaires from fantasymojo.com.
How many people have given you a shout out too? Like, that's the thing.
Yeah, we're the best kept secret in high stakes, and we don't go out of our way to like solicit subscribers. Like, if you know, is kind of deal. I'll tell you this: when I walk around the draft room during the main event drafts in Vegas, 50% of the people have the website up on their laptop. With using the ADP. I'm a high stakes player. I know what the high stakes players want, and that's how the site came about, and that's how it evolved. I know exactly what these guys need, and that's what we deliver.
And that's how the FFPC was born too, born of two high stakes players, and Alex Gaganowski and Dave Gerzak. It's called the Players Championship, literally, because they know what they wanted, and similar to KYC, know your customer. You definitely know that. We will continue to follow you on the X at fantasymojo.com. Give a quick update in the game. The Packers, Sam Laporta, by the way, just caught another pass. It wasn't for much. It was only for a couple of yards because they're inside the 10. Jared Goff is forced to throw it away into the crowd. Souvenir for a fan out there on third down. So it will be 4th and 3. Oh, I take that back. There is a flag on the play. Goff was under heavy pressure from Rashawn Gary. It is holding on Detroit. I don't know what the Packers would do here, if they want to take them back and make it 3rd and 13 or make it 4th and 3. They are going to take the penalty, so it will be a repeat of third down here. But unfortunately, we got to get out. I apologize. Darren, you are the man. Thank you so much for doing the show with me. Don't be a stranger. We'll talk again real soon.
All right, Eric. Thanks for having me.
We are back next Thursday, 7 p.m. Deep End Fantasy Football Podcast and Buffalo WGR 550 host Mike Schopp will be joining me for the full 2 hours. Go to myffpc.com and play the FFPC Weekly Challenge. No draft, no salary cap. 10 players or 12 players. If you want to play with kickers and defenses, you can. If not, you don't have to. Remember, only one player per NFL team, $35 to enter or $200. Win up to $2,500. Enjoy the rest of the game. I'll be on the Bettercast. Best of Better Sports Network is up next. Thanks for watching, everybody.